The Editor-in-Chief is live in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the program. It's December the 11th. You're with the Editor-in-Chief,
Duncan Garner, live.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you. I'm Duncan Garner. Welcome to the podcast. Tonight, the polls say that New Zealanders want a referendum on the Treaty Principles Bill, the bill that caused record numbers of New Zealanders to march on Parliament. That was just last month. They marched in opposition to the bill. But this poll suggests there is support for the bill and New Zealanders want their say. And if a referendum was not held, the second choice New Zealanders opted for in the poll was that Parliament should determine or decide what the treaty principles are to be, ahead of the judiciary and the Waitaki Tribunal. They don't want them involved. It's the sort of support that David Seymour predicted when I last spoke to him. When I spoke to him last, he said this is what he thought would happen. What does it mean? And how much pressure does this put on Chris Luxon to agree to a referendum? Because he doesn't support the bill, so agree to a referendum. Let's go.
Duncan Garner, live.
Right, the people that behind the poll, the instigator behind the poll, the instigator of the poll is Hobson's Pledge, and that is Don Brash, Dr. Don Brash. He's from Hobson's Pledge, and he's with us now. Don, g'day, nice to have you on the program.
Thank you. Good to be talking.
You guys got the poll results back. What do you make of it? There's some support for a referendum ahead of anything else. Then, of course, the Parliament to decide what the principle should be. What are you surprised by the results?
Not surprised, but very pleased, obviously. I mean, what is clear is that the great majority of people on the right, certainly National, ACT and New Zealand First voters, want the decision about a constitution to be made by either Parliament itself or by referendum. They do not want the judiciary or the Waitaki Tribunal doing it, by and large. I mean, in the case of the National Party, of those who have a vote, have a view, some of them don't, something like 80% want the decision taken by Parliament or referendum. And that should be a worry to Christopher Luxon.
Yeah, well, this could put pressure on Christopher Luxon, who doesn't want, who obviously the National Party said they won't support this past the first reading, of course, so it's gone to select committee and that's it. It does not appear that he supports a referendum either. Do you think the more polling that suggests that the people support this way, that it will put Luxon under pressure and he will have to fold at some stage? What's your view on that?
Well, I hope he would have to fold, let's put it that way. I mean, as David Seymour, I think, said, all of us are politicians at the end of the day, and therefore, to some degree, guided by public opinion. And as I say, National Party opinion is, by and large, quite strongly in favour of either the Parliament or a referendum, one or the other, making a decision about a constitution. So it's even stronger, of course, with New Zealand First, and stronger still with ACT, unsurprisingly. But it's very strong even with National.
So with Luxon, then, what do you put his opposition to it then? What do you put that down to? Because is he out of touch with his own party supporters?
Well, I mean, clearly there are some people in the National Party caucus who don't agree with the Treaty Principles Bill. I think that's almost certainly true. And maybe he's just trying to keep the calm in his own caucus. But, I mean, it's interesting. You recall back a couple of years when Judith Collins was leader of the National Party, Labour put out their so-called He Puapua report. And Judith Collins took that up with a vengeance. She gave a couple of speeches, one at the Northern Regional Conference, the National Party, one at another regional conference, very strongly denouncing this He Puapua stuff. And then she went silent, said nothing more about it ever, as far as I recall. So she must have been facing pushback within the National Party caucus for her to suddenly change direction on that. So that may be Luxon's problem. Maybe his younger MPs are uneasy about this.
Oh, so you think the National Party is divided? You think there's a split in the caucus on this?
I suspect that's the case. I don't know for sure. But I mean, we know, for example, that Todd Muller was not very sympathetic to the kind of position which the Treaty Principles Bill indicates. I mean, he was very sympathetic to Māori wards, for example. So there's clearly a group of people in the National Party caucus who quite like the direction of travel we've been on and don't want to rock the boat.
How though can you change these constitutional arrangements if some of them are already bound by court rulings anyway? Because a lot of the stuff has come through not just the Waitangi Tribunal, which is quasi-judicial, but it's also come through the courts, and it's firmly been ingrained in some of these court decisions which have held and which hold up. And so, how would you go about changing some rights that have been given to somebody under law, which has been a decision of the court? How do you change that?
Well, 2 points. First of all, the court is not our top lawmaking body. Parliament is. And the Supreme Court has been taking it onto itself recently, the idea that they are in fact superior to Parliament, and they're not. I mean, stuff written by Roger Partridge or Gary Judd, for example, makes the point that the Supreme Court has been overstating its position, has been assuming that it's got the right, as the Supreme Court does in the United States, to say what is constitutionally proper, what is not. In New Zealand, that is not the case. Parliament is supreme.
Well, it's the supreme lawmaker. It's the supreme lawmaker, isn't it?
That's right. But not only that, if it doesn't like what the Supreme Court has said, they can change the law. As they are likely to do, it seems to me, given the way the Supreme Court has recently reinterpreted the Marine and Coastal Area Act. So Parliament is supreme, and it's very important the Supreme Court understands that.
Yeah, so we've seen that with the Foreshore and Seabed Bill once before. In 2004, you saw that when Helen Clark and Margaret Wilson came in over and above.
I remember it well.
Yeah, you do. Okay, so are you suggesting therefore that Parliament should do this, or that a referendum should push for this? Where's your preference? Because they seem to be the two likely options of the right.
Well, I mean, what Seymour is saying is, first of all, we need a law which clarifies what we actually want. And that has to be done by Parliament. But what Seymour then says is, because Parliament can easily flip that back again next time the government changes, needs something or other to make it slightly harder to change. You can't ever make it impossible to change. Parliament can always change the law. But a referendum is a bit harder to overturn, which is why I think Seymour wants a referendum. He wants Parliament to make a law, and then for that to be ratified in some sense, as in the case of the end-of-life choice bill, which was another example where referendum kind of locked this in concrete.
Yeah, but referendums have been ignored in the past too. Like, you'd have to make it a binding one, because if it's non-binding, then what's the point? Norm Withers with his longer sentences, you remember that? That was ignored.
Yeah, but that's the point. Citizens initiate a referendum, which we may be tempted to push if Parliament doesn't provide for one by Parliament, are not binding. That's quite right. They're indicative, but not binding. A referendum which Parliament itself has endorsed is effectively binding.
Can you see what's missing here, though? There's a debate going on, a constitutional debate about the Constitution, which is effectively what it is, about the treaty, which is the closest thing we have to one, I suppose. And it's being done without Māori sitting around the table. It's been done within the boardroom of the ACT Party, or the caucus of the ACT Party. Within the cabinet as such, but Māori aren't at the table, Don. How do we expect a long-lasting and decent debate to go on if they're not at the table?
Duncan, that's total nonsense. As you know, every single party in Parliament has Māori in it, and New Zealand First and ACT are both led by Māori. So when you say that Māori not sitting at the table, that's obvious nonsense.
Well, they're in the Parliament. They're in the Parliament, but the bill that David Seymour has written and put forward hasn't had any input from Māori around the country. It's only been an ACT measure. It's an ACT moved on.
It hasn't had input from particular iwi and particular Māori organisations. But to say it's got no Māori input is patent nonsense.
Well, which Māori had input into the ACT bill?
How about David Seymour?
Apart from the ACT leader.
Well, how about the other Māori in his caucus?
Apart from the ACT caucus.
Okay, perhaps none. But if it goes through Parliament, is by definition endorsed by other Māori, because every party in Parliament, as you know, of course, has Māori in it.
No, but they haven't endorsed it. They've held a hiko and wildly voted against it. You saw the haka. You couldn't claim that they've endorsed it.
That was a Māori party jack-up. It was organised by the Māori Party, as you know, organised, in fact, by parliamentary staff of Māori Party. I mean, it was a Māori Party gimmick. basically.
Yeah. So if that's the view there, that's just a distraction too, though, because when I say Māori around the country, let's say iwi leadership. Where's the the Māori Council iwi leadership? At the very minimum, if they were around the table with Seymour and Luxon and co, if we all agreed to debate this properly and have a discussion about the future, then isn't that the way forward? Because it seems to me that Māori aren't around the table, Don, with it's only Pākehā making this decision, or political parties making the decision. You can't have a long-lasting agreement like that, surely.
But Duncan, what you're suggesting is that those who chance to have some Maori ancestry, and all of them have other ancestry as well, have some kind of constitutional preference in determining our constitution.
No, a say. I'm not arguing they should have the final say. I'm arguing they should be around the table.
Well, I mean, by all means, have a say. They've said already their view. They don't agree with it. They've made that very clear.
Sure, but if you're putting together a long-lasting solution, is what I'm trying to get at. If you're putting together a long-lasting solution, would you not have it more representative? So we get them on side rather than off side, because Māori seem to be off side, right? They've taken some kind of approach, which is to have the hikoi to say, no, you guys are a bunch of racists. Now, if we turn it back and say, well, let's invite them to the table to have a debate on this, wouldn't that be more inclusive?
I would love the Māori Party to come on board with this thing, but there is a fundamental difference between what the Māori Party is saying and what the rest of the country is saying. The Māori Party is saying they want a 50% shared sovereignty arrangement where there are two sovereigns. As David Longley said, you'll probably remember it yourself, at a famous Bruce Jesson memorial speech, you can't have two sovereigns.
No, and I'm not suggesting having two sovereigns. I'm suggesting you can only have one law. I accept that, but what I'm saying is, could you not, in the making of this bill, have Māori have an input into it, like Seymour and like everybody else, so we get to a conclusion where we're on board and we're in the boat together?
Well, I mean, I'd love Māori Party to come on board.
I'm not even suggesting the Māori Party, because I think they've become an activist group. I think they've gone wildly out to the far edges of the cliff and jumped off it in many ways. I don't think they represent ordinary Māori at all half the time. I'm talking about iwi leadership. You get Ngāi Tahu, you get Tainu, you get all these big guys in, because they are out there with their own entities, their own enterprises, their own finance, their own. These guys have got big futures, and they're running a lot of the ship. Get them around the table to get their view, surely.
Yep. Well, that'd be nice. That'd be very nice. But the reality is, if you move away from the principle that everyone has equal rights, you've lost it.
Do you think they don't want this because whichever way it goes, whether it's a referendum or whether Parliament decides to do something, do you think that they see themselves as losing something that they've already got?
Some of them do. Some of them exactly fear that. They feel they've got a preference now, which they will lose if David Seymour's bill becomes law.
And who are these Māori with the preference? Because, and I was at your audio speech, God, this seems like a long time ago. Both of us haven't aged. We haven't aged. But anyway, I look back and I think there are some Māori who seem to appear to live a life where they have access to the top table and they have that privilege. But there's a whole heap of Māori. I could take you to many places where, as you know, they're not privileged at all. Yep. Now, I wonder if there are almost two levels of Māoridom.
I think that's true. I think there's some Māori leadership doing very nicely indeed, thank you. Some of the leadership of the Māori Party, Te Pāti Māori, clearly living very comfortably indeed, thank you. But others are living a very deprived and miserable life. No one pretends that's anything other than the case. And I'm not defending that or excusing that. We've got to fix those problems. Well, the question, the issue is a constitutional one. All of us equal, or some of us more equal than others? That's the issue.
Do you think Pākehā see the treaty is for them?
I can't speak for Pākehā in general, but I certainly think it's for me.
In what way do you feel linked to it?
Well, I think it was an extraordinary document for its time, and it basically said to Māori chiefs, if you cede sovereignty, we'll guarantee your property rights and equality of citizenship. For 1840, that was a breathtaking.
What does it mean? I mean, even you'd have lawyers interpret that all sorts of ways. But I wonder if New Zealanders look at the treaty and think, well, this is for Māori. This is the Māori thing with the Crown. This has nothing to do with me.
Well, in that case, they're not perhaps very well informed. I think it involves all of us.
Right.
It's an extraordinary document.
Do you think it gives? Does it give Pākehā New Zealanders the same rights as Māori are being afforded under the treaty?
Absolutely.
And you think it's been misinterpreted? You think it's been misinterpreted to only be Māori?
Put it the other way around. The treaty gave Māori in 1840 the same rights as the British settlers. That's the historical reality. They said, you now have the same rights as the British settlers do. So it wasn't conferring anything new on the British settlers. They already had British citizenship. We're saying to the Maori chiefs, you can now enjoy that as well.
Which of course then went haywire, didn't it? When you look at some of the confiscations and so forth after that.
No question, and that's why the treaty settlement process has been important. And I, for one, and I think most New Zealanders think that treaty settlement process was absolutely appropriate, and I've always supported it.
But you're to people who are sort of a layman here, I'm just trying to explain to them. But you think that the treaty has then been misinterpreted by the allocation of these treaty principles, which have morphed out of, say, the Waitangi Tribunal and morphed out of the courts, and to therefore give Māori something that they're not entitled to. That it was over and above what Pākehā New Zealanders were getting.
Well, let's go back to 2014, when the Waitangi Tribunal said about Ngāpuhi, I think, they did not cede sovereignty in 1840. Now, that's when I recall Chris Luxon saying bollocks to that. But that's the myth that's grown up, that we didn't cede sovereignty in 1840, and therefore we have different constitutional rights. That's what this debate's really about. Do we have different constitutional rights or the same constitutional rights? And for me, there's only one future for the country.
So if you look at what would a referendum ask? Because you're suggesting today that if Chris Luxon doesn't go with a referendum and the Parliament doesn't address this, then your group will push for, and which is entirely legal, of course, a citizens initiated referendum, like there was with the what was the last big CIA? It was the citizens. Was it the asset sales? Was it?
Was it the anti-smacking law, perhaps?
Yeah, it was one of those. Anyway, So you would push. You need to get, I think, was it 300,000 signatures to initiate a referendum? How does it work?
More than that, but 360, I think.
360.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you would do that?
I don't want to commit to that firmly at this point, but that's my inclination. Let's see how the next 6 months evolve.
How closely are you working with David Seymour on this?
Not working directly with him at all. In fact, there are one or two aspects about the Treaty Principles Bill that we're not very happy about. I mean, the Principle 1, Principle 3, very happy with. Principle 2 is worded in such a way that may create some difficulties.
Principle 2 being the what it confers on Māori, you mean?
Yeah, it basically says everyone has the same rights unless Māori were given special rights under a treaty settlement.
Yeah, now which is close to one of my earlier questions, which was what happens if Māori have been inferred and given certain things under a court-ordered settlement and under a court decision? How do you therefore go back on that?
Well, it's not a court decision. I mean, treaty settlements, as you know, is a parliamentary act.
No, I understand that, but what about court decisions? I understand the treaty settlements because that becomes an act of Parliament. But what about something out of the court, which of course is a court? I mean, you could hardly roll those back, could you?
Well, it depends what you're thinking of. I mean, the Marine and Coastal Area Act. You may be familiar with the Edwards case, where the High Court made a decision. The Court of Appeal upheld that decision. Supreme Court, we thought, had overruled it the other day, but apparently has not overruled it. And they've given a high prominence to tikanga as New Zealand's first law. Now, I simply reject that proposition. But I forgot what your question was.
Yeah, well, I'll try to make it even simpler because what about things like Māori television, which has come through a court decision around broadcasting and the rights of Māori to have their say in there? Would you peel that back? Would you want that peeled back?
No, of course not. That's been gifted by Act of Parliament, not just court decisions. Parliament decided that Māori should have X and Y, and I don't think there's any way you could unravel that.
Māori fisheries?
No, again, I think this has been a decision which has been made, and that's in fact what the Principle 2 issue is about. You may have seen Jack Tame interview David Seymour on Q&A, was it last Sunday or the Sunday before, when he said a settlement gave Ngāi Tahu sovereignty over 94% of the South Island. Now, I've forgotten if he used the word sovereignty, but that was the implication. Now, I don't think that's consistent with what the Act of Parliament said, but if it did say that, I mean, there's no way one could really accept that as a final conclusion. We don't want 94% of the South Island under the control of a single tribe.
Well, I don't think that. I think it's past that. I think it's past the point of being able to do that anyway, given it's private land. I mean,
well, that's my point.
Yeah, you couldn't go pinching private land. I mean, if you do that, you definitely. I'd go back to the Shipley argument, which is you would have a civil war, which I don't think this has to be civil war either. What about things like treaty settlements would be safe? You agree with that?
Yes, I at the moment I do. I can't think of any undo. But that's a contract which has been made by the Crown with a particular tribe. I think by and large we should. Well, my general proposition is we stick with those.
So what would go then? Would it be the fact that Māori get a say on Resource Management Act decisions and seats around the table? Would you get rid of the Māori seats in Parliament? Because that's an act of Parliament. That's an act of Parliament.
But you can undo that. I mean, there was an Act of Parliament in 1867. You no doubt know the history of it.
Yeah.
And they were credited for a very good reason, because at that point only men who had property got to vote. So Māori seats were set up with no property qualification required. But those seats should have gone when every male and every female, of course, every woman, got the vote in 1893. The Royal Commission on the electoral system said in 1986 that if New Zealand adopts MMP, there was no longer a need for separate Māori electorates.
So with that you could end up with having no if you follow that line, you could end up with no guaranteed Māori representation in Parliament apart from Winston and Seymour.
Well, you might have none at all. You might have no Afghan or Chinese either.
Yeah, but the Afghan, I don't think the Afghani signed the treaty. I don't think they were part of the treaty.
Take away the 6-7 Māori electorates.
So you consider Māori the same as Afghani or recent immigrants?
No, but if you want every citizen to have the same constitutional rights as I do, then whether they have Maori ancestry, Chinese ancestry, ancestry, or European, you have the same rights.
Right. So there would. So there'd be no. I understand. There'd be no special seats in Parliament, no special seats in the councils. What else would go? Would you? So they wouldn't have a say on, if I could build a house down the road, that sort of thing. That'd all be gone. All that sort of consultation.
Of course not. They would have a say in the same way that you and I have a say. Yeah. If it affects us directly, we've got a right to object, and that should always remain true.
Would there be a level of would you want to embed a level of co-governance in such that say the Tainui River, say the Waikato River, which has a lot of Tainui management on it, would that remain? Because Auckland gets their water courtesy of that deal, we'd be thirsty and smelly, Donna, without it.
That's the treaty settlement, of course, and that's one of the issues. Section Principle 2 of what's in the bill does say that treaty settlements would not be touched. And it does raise the question, should some New Zealanders have the right to charge Aucklanders for water or not? Now, it's a tricky issue because it is a property right which the Parliament has decided to give to a particular group of people.
There's been co-governance for years. I mean, your beloved National NACT Party have sat around the table for years and overseen co-government. The Tūhoi, they're involved. I mean, on all these dock boards and things, we've been going about this stuff excellently side by side. Yes, I know the water bill. I know the Three Waters took it a step further. No, I don't argue with you on that point at all. But before then, co-governance happened for decades.
But why would you want that? The implication surely is
why
that Māori are not quite up to it and can't be appointed on their own merit. And of course, I actually reject that. There are extremely competent Māori who can be and are appointed on their merit.
Who?
It's interesting.
Who?
Just take the Tauranga case for a second,
Who?
Duncan.
Yeah.
There's been a big argument in Tauranga lately whether Māori should be appointed to council committees, not elected, but appointed, because Māori voice should be heard. On the Māori Council itself, there are 3 councillors who identify as Māori. So what's the argument here? Why do you need additional Māori representation on committees?
I suppose the Māori don't trust that they would be voted for. I think they probably think that the majority of the tyranny, or whatever you call it, is white, as Pākehā in New Zealand, 80%. So therefore, it's much harder, because of who they are, to get voted on. It's more likely that we'll appoint our own people, or just like in business. I was with some business people recently who admitted that they never appointed women to the role because they appointed sporty men like themselves, and they're now going through the system. So you know what I mean? There's not necessarily, Māori would have no guarantee of representation.
Well, I don't have a guarantee either.
No.
I mean, Duncan, look at Parliament now. There are 7 Māori seats, guaranteed to have 7 Māori in them. But every single party in Parliament has Māori MPs now, without exception. If you took out the 7 Māori seats, there'd still be a higher proportion of MPs with Māori ancestry than in the general population.
I'd have to check that. I'm not sure that would be the case. Are you sure?
Well, almost sure. Certainly, I mean, if you think of, I think there are, well, look at the cabinet for a second, 20 ministers, 7 of whom are Māori, none elected on Māori electorates.
Who are they? You've got Winston?
In National, you've got Reti and Potaka.
Yep, and then you got Winston.
First, you've got Winston, Shane Jones, and Casey Costello.
Yeah.
In ACT, you've got David Seymour and
I guess they are, sure.
Nicole McKee.
Yeah.
Nicole
McKee, yep, that's right, Nicole McKee. Yeah. So you've got, but I suppose Willie Jackson would argue, but they're not kaupapa Māori politicians, which is his argument, which means that, they put Māori first.
But you don't want people who put an ethnic group first.
No, I know what you're saying. Yeah, I understand that, but he would argue that they are politicians first, and then the fact that they're Māori is accidental. They're Māori, I suppose, but they don't cope up a Māori. They don't see it as their calling, whereas the Māori Party see it as their calling.
The Māori Party see themselves as serving only Māori.
Correct.
And frankly, we don't want MPs like that. We don't want MPs who serve only one ethnic group, surely.
Well, that's why the Māori Party was set up, wasn't it? It was set up for that reason.
We both recall the origins of that party, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think the country is better off having a party which is full of MPs whose only concern is their own ethnic group.
Okay, so what do we do then from here? So do you think Luxon's going to face increasing pressure over the 6 months, or do you think it's going to die a death, this debate?
Well, I mean, as you know, submissions on the bill close on the 7th of January, and we certainly in Hobson's Pledge will do our damnedest to keep this issue alive, and we'll do as much as we can to put pressure on the Prime Minister to promote this bill beyond the second reading. Now, it may not happen, but if it doesn't, we'll make his life uncomfortable for the next election. Why
do you think he's so opposed to it? Because of the fact that it seems to cause division?
Well, I assume that's the case. I don't know. I haven't talked to him about it.
Is he gutless?
I don't want to use that word about the Prime Minister. I know how tough a job he faces.
What word would you use?
Well,
your decision.
Social media have described him as a scaredy cat, which I didn't much like that expression, but it is true that he's been very timid in this particular issue.
Do you think because he is the Prime Minister?
Well, some Prime Ministers are timid, some are not. In this particular issue, he's timid.
Don, nice catching up. Nice talking with you. I appreciate your time today.
All the very best.
Duncan Garner, live.
Okay, so let's slam it.
It's the Slam Dunk.
I'll stay on this issue because I want to give you some more sort of explanation around it because I know some people can get confused. So on this poll on treaty principles, it is just what the doctor ordered. And I don't mean Dr. Don Brash. I mean David Seymour. He even said to me recently, he knows that his bill will not pass in Parliament. And you know that and I know that because National won't allow it to happen in Parliament. But he also said that the issue won't go away and the polls will pick up on this and show the level of support that there really is for it. Sure enough, voila, there's a poll that shows there's support for it. Don't be surprised. This poll has been done. And we shouldn't be surprised by the results. This is also part of a wider plan, in my view, part of a much wider plan, an organised plan between Hobson's Choice and ACT and so forth. They are the same thinkers, right? And it's simply naive to think that Seymour, Brash, ACT and Hobson's Pledge haven't discussed a plan going forward. You can see it rolling out. It doesn't just happen. Anyway, there's nothing illegal about cooperating. I'm just saying that there's more going on here behind the scenes than just a mere hikoi and parliamentary debate. The hikoi was good. In fact, the hikoi in many ways was good because it was crucial to Brash and to Seymour as it led the news for days as other New Zealanders went to work. And it put it front and centre in people's minds so they could understand what was going on here. How Chris Luxon didn't see this happening is beyond me. Or did he see it happening? And was he quite comfortable allowing this to go through to get the debate going? It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Although he did say there's nothing in the bill at all that he likes. He was asked that question recently. Nothing at all. Really? Anyway, the poll, and it picks up on many New Zealanders who perhaps were not on the march and who until now have not had their say. So it picks up their views. And it feels like they've not had the ability to have their say. Well, now they have. Now they've spoken and said, put the Treaty Principles Bill to a referendum in front of the New Zealand people. That would truly shake the system up. And I predict New Zealanders would vote for it. They'd vote for it to pass. And you've just heard from Don Brash in this podcast that if that doesn't go through, then he would push for a citizens-initiated referendum. So all this really rests with Luxon. It's up to him as Prime Minister whether it goes to that referendum at the polls. He said it won't pass in Parliament, so we have to take him at his word. But will he succumb to a referendum? He'd probably like to avoid it, I would have thought, given the size of the hikoi. But if his refusal starts to impact him in the polls, and he starts to go down in the polls as a result of his opposition to this, could Luxon tug on the treaty card and agree to a referendum as a way of climbing back up the polls? He's not going up the polls at the moment, he's going down. So anything could happen. There is still so much time to play out on this one. And Seymour's ultimate aim has always been a referendum in front of the country, which Luxon has so far not agreed to. And I'm sure that was part of the coalition negotiations too. Seymour wanted it. Luxon said, no, can't run with that. But Brash is now involved too, and the poll is out that it's clear that Seymour and Brash have the same agenda. Well, that's no surprise. And the pressure can only increase on Luxon from here, right? Māori would react strongly against a referendum as they have much to lose. But Pākehā New Zealand, I think, would vote for change and vote to have a say on the treaty principles because it would take something off Māori. So I think Pākehā would probably say, oh yeah, they got too much, take it off them, you know? You can just see it now. Luxon is now caught up in a potentially messy race war and treaty debate that he would have done well to avoid. But he's in it now. The genie's out of the bottle, and Luxon may have difficulty now putting it back in. And of course, there is so much time for this to play out. Sure, the bill will die in Parliament in 6 months, we know that. But Brash and Seymour and the alike aim to keep this in front of people and centre and get New Zealanders so engaged in that Luxon has to bow to pressure. Seymour certainly shows no sign of going away. He's run campaigns before. His polling is up. Nationals is down. It's playing out just as he thought. Luxon should be nervous, I reckon, real nervous. He'll be hoping this disappears from public view. Seymour's job is to keep the issue alive, and so far he's done really well to keep it alive. Interesting.
Duncan Garner, live.
That is us. This will be available as a podcast on Rover shortly, and wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for your feedback and your support. I'm Duncan at rover.nz. To my team, Isaac, what do you make of Brash? What do you make of Brash? You have a view on Brash? Do you remember the O-River speech? Probably not, eh?
No, I do not, believe it or not.
No, I'm not trying to be patronising. I'm just trying to say...
No, I don't. He's a good speaker, I will say. I think that... I don't know.
Got a bit ropey there at times, didn't it?
Yeah, lots of political mumbo-jumbo, which I'm not as attuned to.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that lots of other people are.
They want Pākehā and Māori to have the same rights.
I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that statement.
Yeah. That's the thing. That's the statement. Māori would have to lose something for that to happen.
Yeah.
That's the problem, you see.
Yeah. So it is.
So I think you're right. I think the way they position this to Pākehā New Zealanders is actually attractive. Well, why should they get something? You know, we're the same, aren't we? I can just see it now.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Anyway, that's us, guys. Thanks to my team. Isaac, the man. We'll do it again tomorrow. Remember, life is a dress rehearsal. There is no curtain raiser. This is it. We live in one of the best places on earth, so get out, enjoy it, and have a great rest of the day. Take care, New Zealand.
That was Duncan Garner, Editor-in-Chief Live. Missed something on the live stream? Text Duncan to 3598 to listen back on the podcast. Want to get in touch? Got something to say? Email Duncan at rover.nz. Call 0800 863 293.